Very good evening and welcome to this special broadcast from the Tribune Network. I'm Rohit Bhan. A big story coming out of the Congress party today. Senior party leader Kapil Sibal landing up in Lucknow and filing his nomination papers as an independent candidate backed by the Samajwadi Party. He was accompanied by Samajwadi Party leader Akhilesh Yadav when he went to file his nomination papers. I'm joined by my senior colleague from our Delhi bureau, Aditi Tandon. Aditi, now practically G23 reduced to G22. How big is this blow to the Congress?
Well, I think this is a huge jolt to the Congress, considering Mr. Kapil Sibal is not just any other leader. He is a very important former minister of the UPA-led, Congress-led UPA government. You might recall, Rohit, that Mr. Sibal has handled key portfolios for the Congress party in the past, including human resource development and later on law and information technology and communications as well. And during his tenure, a lot of landmark decisions were taken, especially in the education sector. You would recall the Right to Education Act was implemented and finally rolled in the country. So his exit comes at a time when the Congress has lost 9 very important states beginning 2021. It started with the cycle where Congress lost in Kerala, Assam, West Bengal, Puducherry, and recently the party has lost 5 more states. We will recall that the G23 had written their letter to Mrs. Sonia Gandhi in August of 2020, and they precisely warned of this kind of a rout unless and until the leadership issue was resolved, and also, urgent reform and radical reform measures were taken within the party to revitalize the Congress and make it battle ready, because, Congress is losing its electoral base. What is important about Mr. Sibal's exit is that he is not joining the BJP. So you see, his exit is extremely contrasting as compared to recent exits from the party, for instance, of Hardik Patel, who's almost, likely to join the BJP shortly, Mr. Sunil Jakhar, who has joined the BJP at a very high-profile event in the capital. So Mr. Sibal keeps his moral high ground very high. What he's saying essentially is that he has, as you know, been ranged against the Gandhi family of the party, and he has repeatedly in public said that Gandhi should make way for a new leader. So you see, Rohit, the structure of the Congress party is such that you cannot continue in the party. You almost become untenable. Your position becomes untenable in the Congress if you are openly pitched against the Gandhi family. Mr. Sibal's remarks were met with extreme resistance within the Congress party. You would recall that, eggs were thrown at his residence here in Delhi after he demanded a change in the leadership apart from the Gandhis. Then you might recall that in August of last year, he even hosted a very important meeting of all non-BJP leaders. And the meeting was extremely significant because even parties like the Biju Janata Dal, the YSRCP, which never go on the invitation of Mr. Rahul Gandhi or Mrs. Sonia Gandhi to parliamentary strategy group meetings, they had actually come and joined the dinner hosted by Mr. Kapil Sibal. So you would see that in his exit, he keeps that moral high ground and he says that I'm going to continue to try and build a non-BJP front for 2024 elections. And I am actually continuing to oppose the policies of the BJP. So that is the stark difference between the exit of others who've joined the BJP, for instance, Jyotiraditya Scindia, Jitin Prasada, people like Hardik Patel and Sunil Jakhar, who's going to, Hardik Patel is going to join BJP. So Mr. Sibal keeps that window open to continue to oppose the BJP. That gives him some moral heft in the anti-BJP space.
And also, Aditi, he mentioned after he filed his nomination paper, he said he had resigned on 16th of May. That's, I think, a day after the Chintan Shivir ended. So what does it, portray about the party? Here you have a Chintan Shivir which was carried out, and still senior party leaders like Mr. Kapil Sibal leaving the party. Where does it leave the Congress party and the leadership?
Right after the conclusion of the Chintan Shivir, which was meant to reassure the cadres of the capability of the Congress to reinvent itself as an electoral force that it used to be at one point of time, Mr. Sibal has resigned right on 16th of May. The Chintan Shivir ended on 15th of May. And also important it is to note, Rohit, that a number of other G23 leaders did attend the Chintan Shivir, but Mr. Kapil Sibal maintained a distance from it. Mr. Sibal did not go to Udaipur to attend the Shivir. He was obviously contemplating that he would exit. And also his exit comes just a day after Mrs. Sonia Gandhi announced two very important panels within the party. One panel is the political affairs group, in which she has accommodated Mr. Anand Sharma and Mr. Ghulam Nabi Azad, two other prominent members of the G23 group, much like Mr. Sibal. And the second group she has formed is the election task force, So she has formed two important committees where Mr. Sibal was absent, conspicuously absent. And it's no surprise to people who've been following the Congress, because as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Sibal's public position against the Gandhi family of the Congress made his position largely untenable. You will recall, Rohit, that there were open demands for Mr. Sibal's expulsion from high-ranking leaders of the Congress party. For instance, Chhattisgarh Health Minister Mr. T.S. Singhdeo said that you should expel Mr. Sibal. Even Bhupesh Baghel came out openly against Mr. Sibal. So did Mr. Ashok Gehlot, the Rajasthan Chief Minister. So his position was growing to become extremely untenable. His Rajya Sabha term is ending in July. The elections to 57 seats across 15 states in the Rajya Sabha are due, and the last date for nomination filing is 31st of May. So Mr. Sibal goes to the Samajwadi Party, gets his support from the party. Just days after he's organized a bail for Mr. Azam Khan, a very important senior leader of the Samajwadi Party. And as he said, Mr. Sibal today, that he will continue to be an independent. And Mr. Akhilesh Yadav also clarified that they are going to simply support Mr. Sibal. In fact, Samajwadi Party had even offered to support Mr. Sibal should he decide not to leave the Congress. But Mr. Sibal argued that it would be morally not the right thing to do. If I'm seeking support from some other party, I need to first quit the parent party and then move ahead.
And Aditi, have other members of the G23, the remaining members, has any of them responded to Mr. Sibal's resignation from the party? Or off record, what are they maintaining?
In fact, off record, a lot of leaders were anticipating such a move. Right. Because you see, largely in politics, what happens, Rohit, any party is as powerful as the positions it can offer to its leaders. Congress is full of very senior leaders. Most of these people are former ministers, their Rajya Sabha terms are ending. Mr. Azad's term already ended earlier. Mr. Anand Sharma's term has just ended. Mr. Sibal's term is to end in July. So you see, everybody wants some kind of political rehabilitation to happen. Congress party, with its limited electoral space across India, does not have that kind of heft anymore. How many people can it, after all, accommodate? And in the Chintan Shivir, Congress made a very important decision to actually, bring in the younger lot, bring in people under 50 years of age across all party levels, which means such people are also to be accommodated in important positions such as Rajya Sabha. Right. You would recall, Rohit, that the youth committee, which was constituted at Chintan Shivir, actually recommended that there should be a retirement age for leaders who are in Rajya Sabha, so that, fresh blood can go into the upper house, the House of Elders, and so that other kind of people, other kind of leadership can also be groomed.
Right. And also, has the Congress party reacted officially or off the record? Has the party responded to Mr. Sibal's resignation?
In fact, Congress party has not officially reacted to Mr. Sibal's exit. We have only heard a stray comment from Mr. Tariq Anwar, who is currently one of the general secretaries and also a member of the Congress Working Committee. And Mr. Anwar has again made the same point, which Mrs. Sonia Gandhi has repeated on recent occasions twice. Mrs. Gandhi has repeatedly told Congress leaders that the party has given a lot to every leader, and this is the time to pay back the debt of the party, and not actually to keep expecting something from the party, but to come and stand by the party in this very crucial and in this very vulnerable moment in its entire 137-year history. So Tariq Anwar has only said that Mr. Sibal, with his kind of stature in the party, Mr. Sibal, as you know, is a two-term Rajya Sabha MP. He had first entered Rajya Sabha with support from the Rashtriya Janata Dal from Bihar. And this time he's going to enter from Samajwadi Party. And he's a two-term Lok Sabha MP. He defeated Smriti Irani, you would recall, from Chandni Chowk in Delhi. So he's been a very important minister, and obviously Congress did value his contribution up to at least 2020. After which, of course, as we just discussed, Rohit, that Mr. Sibal started demanding openly that Mrs. Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi should make way for somebody else in Congress presidency. He even said things like Congress has its eyes wide shut. That was when he said after the exit of Sushmita Dev, Mahila Congress chief. And so, he has been making disparaging remarks against the party. He recently said that Congress leadership is in cuckoo land. He also questioned Mr. Rahul Gandhi's, Rahul Gandhi's announcement with respect to Mr. Charanjit Singh Channi as the Punjab chief ministerial candidate of the party on the eve of recent elections, and went on to ask in what capacity did Mr. Rahul Gandhi make that announcement, because he is, after all, not a full-time president. He is not even in the leadership role anywhere. In fact, his mother is the interim president. And Mr. Sibal's most offensive remark as far as the Congress is concerned was, where is the party leadership? Who is taking decisions without accountability? So this kind of a history against Mr. Sibal, I think what happened today was only a natural outcome of recent events with respect to Congress and Mr. Sibal.
Also, Aditi, after he filed his nomination paper, he mentioned that he will try to bring together anti-BJP parties, anti-BJP forces. What does he mean by that? I mean, does he see himself as some kind of focal point in galvanizing these anti-BJP parties?
Yes, in fact, you are extremely on the dot, Rohit, when you say that he does see himself as perhaps somebody who can leverage his position in the world of legal affairs to bring a lot of parties together. So you see, Rohit, Mr. Sibal, during the course of his career as a politician and as a senior lawyer in the Supreme Court, has defended very important opposition leaders. He has defended Mr. Lalu Yadav in the fodder scam. He has defended at some point of time Akhilesh Yadav and the important leaders of the Samajwadi Party, even Jagan Reddy. So he has this very important clout that he exercises across the wide political spectrum. And as I mentioned earlier, that last year in August, just few days after his birthday, if I remember right, on 10th of August, he hosted a very important dinner at his official residence in Delhi, where people came, where political opponents attended. For instance, Aam Aadmi Party leaders came, and also Shiromani Akali Dal leaders came. CPI, CPM came, and TMC came. BJD, YSR, CP parties which never attend any opposition front meetings, they also came. So you see, he was at that time compared to Mr. Inder Kumar Gujral, the late Prime Minister of the country, who had attempted a similar consolidation of non-Indira Gandhi forces, if you remember, Rohit, in 1982. And Inder Kumar Gujral had managed to bring titans of the order of N.T. Ramarao, Mr. Chandrasekhar, people of that kind of stature together against Mrs. Indira Gandhi. Of course, destiny willed otherwise, and Mrs. Gandhi was unfortunately assassinated, after which Mr. Rajiv Gandhi won a huge sympathy wave. Right. So, that never came through, but something like that was attempted. And it was very interesting to see that Mr. Naresh Gujral, the son of Inder Kumar Gujral, was a prominent guest at Mr. Sibal's dinner last year. And when we spoke to Mr. Gujral, he said that at the dinner, the larger outcome of the meeting was that all opposition parties need to come together. And of course, the Congress also is welcome to join. And every leader in that meeting had actually made the point that Gandhis need to vacate the presidency of the Congress in favor of somebody else. So, there's this entire sentiment now building up against dynastic politics in the country. You also know that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has made it his personal cause to attack dynasties. He has repeatedly attacked Parivarwad in his recent elections. And in Uttar Pradesh, if the results are anything to go by, Akhilesh Yadav did lose a lot of votes because of that narrative of the BJP, plus other factors, of course, which played against the BJP and the opposition forces. So you see, Mr. Sibal has this capacity of galvanizing the entire non-BJP space. And you should consider the fact, Rohit, that even today, while exiting the Congress party, Mr. Sibal was unusually calm about his relationship with the Gandhis.
Right.
He did not make any adverse comments today. In fact, when the reporters were repeatedly prodding him, why did you leave the Congress? What is it that you have against the Congress? All he said was that it was my duty to speak against the Congress till such time as I was in the Congress. Now that I'm not in the Congress, it is not my cause to comment on the party. And now I'm moving ahead. However, a Congress party is still like my family, and all the leaders in the party are like my friends. So you see, he keeps that very important door open, because without the Congress, everybody realizes no opposition front against the BJP is going to be viable, because it is the Congress and the BJP which fight directly in close to 200 out of 545 Lok Sabha seats.
Well, the unending drama in Congress. Thank you so much for those insights, Aditi. We'll keep on following the stories. You can log on to our website, tribuneindia.com, and also other social media platforms like the Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Meanwhile, thanks for watching.